Welcome to the Fucked Up Guides Fucked Up podcast, where we tackle a series of real life topics with humor, honesty, a sprinkle of fucks, and a shit ton of metaphors. I'm your host, and today we're unpacking on our very first episode, drum roll please, bum, 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 boundaries. Woohoo! Now, you may be wondering, why the Fucked Up Guide? Why the Fucked Up podcast? And what the fuck am I really doing? Well, the Fucked Up Guide started exactly 6 months ago as a way to send a positive message out into the world. We gained some followers on social media by letting them know that they matter. That with self love, self worth, they can do anything, meaning you can do anything. If you truly let go of the stigma, the ego, and truly understand that this whole fuckery that we call life is a human experience. Now, if you're up for the adventure, come with me on a journey of self acceptance, realization, and empowerment in this very series. But before we dive into today's topic, I want to advise you all. We are not medical professionals by any stretch of the imagination. If you feel you need medical advice, please seek a medical professional. We're simply here to motivate, entertain, and to have you think a little bit. We've learned and continue to learn our lessons from this school of life, and we're here to articulate the things that we have learned. That means the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent. And now that we've got all that shit out of the way, let's get this going. I want to start by asking, what are boundaries? Simply put, boundaries are like invisible lines that define where you end and others begin. I like to call it that line that we always talk about that we draw across the sand. Well, we're drawing those lines across the sand right in front of us to preserve ourselves. They're your personal limits and guidelines that help you navigate relationships and protect your overall well being. And I will stress, and I will continue to say this and beat this dead horse. For those of you who are new to this topic, I want you to feel at home with the concept. Don't get this twisted, and please don't get this confused. We're not trying to be selfish, and we're not being assholes. We're not trying to alienate people or have complete disregard. But rather, we're trying to understand what pushes us to the limit. This becomes a you project. This becomes a me project. This is not a we project. What pushes us to that limit? What are we comfortable with? What are we not comfortable with? But before we can even decipher what that is, we need to truly understand what that concept is, and we need to understand exactly what lines are we really drawing. And that is where we come to understand and really look within ourselves. Again, what makes us tick? What are you willing to tolerate and what you won't tolerate? More importantly, how much effort and energy are you willing to put to certain situations, with other people, or with certain people? And really truly understanding what you're drawing and why. And for those who believe to be empaths, boundaries are crucial. You might find yourself saying yes when you really want to say no, take on others' emotions as your own, or even neglecting your own needs to avoid conflict. But here is the truth. Setting boundaries is an act of love. That's right. I'm going to fucking repeat that shit again. Boundaries is an act of love for yourself and for those around you. And here comes the hit parade of fucking metaphors. I'm going to go back to those lines, okay? Imagine boundaries being those lines drawing across the sand to separate you from everyone else. If you're in a healthy relationship, and guys, the key here is healthy relationship, okay? For those of us who have been through, or for those of you who are going through what you may consider a dysfunctional, perhaps a toxic relationship, and you're dealing with these toxic people in our lives, we'll need to talk about that later. That'll actually be our next episode, part 2 of boundaries. Because just today, the topic of boundaries is really all about you and what you need to set up for yourself and for your own well-being. Because the whole topic of boundaries, that's a whole topic in and of itself. And the thing is that when you're in a healthy relationship, whatever that relationship may look like in your life, they will have a similar line in front of them as well. And this is where the area of mutual respect comes in. But I want us to master the idea of setting these healthy boundaries first and really truly looking within ourselves before we can talk about respect, let alone mutual respect. And here's the thing. Boundaries is a topic that we have to be comfortable with. And just like one of our fucked up tips of the day, for those of you who follow us on Instagram and follow us on TikTok, thank you so much for the support. There is a fucked up tip of the day that tells you, choose yourself every single time. Those who love and care for you will still be around. Well, folks, I'm going to add one more line to that. Those who truly love and care for you will not cross those lines that know will hurt you or even risk the relationship with you. So, if I haven't drove this the importance and the urgency home, I'll ask this question. Why are boundaries so fucking important anyway? Again, going with the metaphors. Imagine your energy as currency. Yes, your energy, you, yourself, the effort you put in every day is a currency. And imagine yourself as a bank account. There are a series of debits and credits. And imagine those debits and credits as energy exchanges. Not having those boundaries in place, that bank account may see more debits depleting the account and eventually going into negative balances. You'll have nothing left. This is where we enter into burnout. We tend to get resentful, and the emotional exhaustion kicks in. See, by setting boundaries, you're not being selfish. You're practicing self-love, self-respect, and self-care. It's about recognizing your worth, prioritizing your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Because, my dears, if no one's told you today, let me be the first to tell you. You are so fucking worth it. And you need to value yourself and your well-being. If you don't value and respect yourself enough, no one else will. You're allowing others to take over, and you need to set the example on how you want to be treated. And don't ever fucking settle. But understand this, that with setting those healthy boundaries, you're giving yourself the self-respect, and people will notice. And people, if they truly care about you, they'll follow through. Now, I want to continue with the subject of boundaries as an act of love. But first, a sip of water. Talk amongst yourselves. All right. Now that I am properly hydrated, boundaries as an act of love. Because I'm sure there are some of you out there that are kind of looking at whether it's your screen or just looking out and listening to this podcast, and you're going, what the fuck? And anxiety levels are going up. I can tell already. So I will tell you this. Please don't run away. Don't cringe. Don't scroll away. I know it may be feeling fucking scary for some of us. and even painfully guilt inducing to say no, or more important, to assert your needs. Trust me, recovering people pleaser. I know, but right now, this isn't about me. This is all about you. And here's one thing that no one tells you, but I will. Boundaries benefit everyone involved. Yeah? Everyone in your fucking world will benefit, but only if you and if they allow it. And that's more to come later. That's part 2. But right now, I want you to feel comfortable. And you need to start that exercise of really looking within yourself and doing that introspection. And I'm going to repeat the questions again. What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? What are you willing to tolerate? What's a deal breaker? What won't you tolerate? What exactly, how much effort and energy are you willing to put to certain situations and certain people? And I think the most important question of all, how much energy do I need to keep for myself in order for me to keep the lights on and keep everything running? That, I think, is the most important thing that you need to ask yourself. How much energy do you need for yourself in order to be okay? And when you are clear about those limits, it allows for much more healthier and a more authentic experience with your connections. And again, shit ton of metaphors. I'm not kidding. Imagine a garden with well tended fences. So you have your garden, and each section is beautifully divided with well tended with small fences or chicken wire or whatever the hell you have. You're growing lilies, roses. Maybe it's a vegetable garden. What you're growing in the garden really doesn't fucking matter. The idea is that you're creating a safe space for each of these plants or flowers to grow. Each plant is going to thrive within its own space. Eventually, you'll see it from a bigger picture, and that entire garden will flourish as a whole. That's the power of boundaries. They create the space for growth, understanding, and again, mutual respect. And of course, I'm not going to tell you that this exercise is easy, because it isn't. It isn't easy to put a mirror in front of your face, to really look inside and admit what really makes you tick, what really pisses you off, because you fear losing people, and you might fear that rejection. And I'm going to give you the long and short of it. You may get rejected. You're going to worry about hurting others' feelings. You might hurt others' feelings. And you're going to feel guilty about putting yourself first. You'll always get pushback from those close to you that may not be in a healthy place. And the way those people react to you, I'm going to give it to you straight, is frankly not your fucking problem. I know, listen, I know it sounds horrible. I know it sounds like you're abandoning people, but you're not. It's not your job to regulate anyone else's mood or how they react. That's a trauma response that we learn from early on. And most importantly, that's a topic for another day. You no longer have to do that. That is not your place. That is not your problem. Your job is to control you. Like another fucked up tip of the day, control the controllables. You can only control how you handle your own self. And fuck everybody else. Obviously, though, with respect, kindness, and grace. See, the point is, if your energy is depleted, like an empty pitcher, you can't pour from it. So, why the fuck would you be running on empty? How are you going to pour from yourself if there's nothing there, if you haven't recharged those batteries? Now, what I want to do is I want to give you some strategies to help navigate boundary setting. And again, really get acquainted with yourself. The first one is, and especially those of us who are starting the journey and you're not quite there yet, sweetie, start small. Yeah, you don't have to boil the ocean. Begin by setting boundaries in smaller, low stakes situations to help build that confidence. Really build up that muscle memory. For example, if you're invited to an event or you're being asked to do something you may feel it's going to leave you depleted, simply say no or no thank you. Always remember, no is a complete sentence. Number 2, communicate clearly. Use I statements to express your needs without blaming or shaming. Express yourself clearly. That way, there isn't a misunderstanding between you or anyone else. Also, be mindful of the words you're using because words really do matter. Clearly communicating your needs can lead to massive expansion and healing for yourself and for those around you. Number 3, practice self care. Prioritize activities that, like I mentioned, recharge those batteries. Those things will reinforce those boundaries. Take the time for yourself. Treat yourself with the same kindness, empathy, and grace that you would someone you absolutely love. And that doesn't have to be a production. We're not trying to again boil the ocean. You don't need to take the whole day if you don't have it. But if you definitely need a reset, a rest, a pick me up, whatever the fuck you want to call it, think about the things that truly bring you joy and peace. It could be as simple as drinking a cup of tea in silence while sitting on your favorite chair or vegging out to your favorite show. Also, if you don't feel like picking up the phone, don't. That's what voicemail and text are for. You're entitled to take the time for yourself. And at the end of the day, this is your journey. And really, stop thinking about what others think about you. That's none of your fucking business. What do you do for yourself in the here and now? That's what you need to worry about. And my last one, number 4, talk to trusted friends, family, and professionals. Or us here at the Fucked Up Guide. Hey, 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 you can talk to us. Those who truly understand and respect your journey. I highly encourage you to message us on TikTok, on Instagram, and we can talk about whatever you want on our very next episode. Remember, our grandmothers had advice columns on the newspapers. Our moms had talk shows, and you, my friend, in 2024, have the Fucked Up Guide. Now, going into the topic of mutual respect. One key ingredient in boundary setting is mutual respect. It is about honoring not just your own boundaries, but those of around you. Now, when we talk about this, I'm talking about healthy boundaries. Any other type of relationship, like I mentioned earlier, dysfunctional, perhaps you may consider it toxic. That's for next week. That'll be part 2 of boundaries. Right now, we just need to get acquainted with the topic. Boundaries and self respect. And how are those two intertwined? Very simple. By setting healthy boundaries for yourself, you are not only honoring yourself, but you are also respecting yourself. And understand that once that happens and you're in these healthy relationships, they will thrive on mutual understanding, communication, and empathy. This part of boundaries is not a one-way solo project, but rather a collaboration. And it will bloom and it will thrive. When you respect others' boundaries, you create a space of trust and safety. Likewise, when others respect your boundaries, it fosters deeper connection and reduces all of the bullshit. So, let's recap what we just talked about. Boundaries are your personal limits and guidelines. I'm gonna repeat that again. Boundaries are your own personal limits and guidelines. What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? What can you tolerate? What you won't tolerate? How much effort and energy are you willing to give to others and other certain situations? And most important of all, how much energy and effort do you need for yourself in order to function? 2, boundaries are crucial for protecting your energy and your well being. Remember, these are energy exchanges. Some will give you a bounty full of credits, others are going to leave you really depleted. Choose wisely. Setting boundaries as an act of love for yourself and others. You respect yourself and you set the example on how you want to be treated. Those who love and care for you will treat you as such. And the final one, mutual respect is key to healthy relationships and effective boundary setting. Now remember, you deserve to set boundaries that honor your needs and your values. It's not about being selfish. It's about being self-aware and practicing self-love. Because you are fucking enough. You fucking matter. And you are so worth it. That's all for today's episode of the Fucked Up Guides, Fucked Up Podcast. Join us next time for part 2 of boundaries, where we talk about mutual respect and taking those boundaries that we have set out into the world and how to navigate that with people. Obviously, we will do it with humor, honesty, a sprinkle of fucks, and yes, a shit ton of metaphors. If you enjoyed this content, please share, follow us on Instagram and TikTok. This episode will be on Spotify. And until then, take care of yourselves. Keep those boundaries like keep setting those boundaries like the fucking boss that you are. Because at the end of the day, you matter. Thank you so much for sticking around.